Welcome to the IT-Free-Training video on migration roles between servers. The migration tools in Windows Server 2012 and R2 have been improved to make the process easier than before. This video will look at what you can achieve using migration tools and perform a demonstration of how to move the DHCP server role from one server to another. Migration gives you a bit more control than performing an upgrade. However, it requires more effort and planning from the administrator. Migration can be used to migrate roles, features, shares, and OS settings. Unlike an upgrade, the administrator can choose what to migrate and what to leave behind. Let's consider the following server. It has DHCP and DNS roles installed on it. In this case, the server has been in use for a long time. When this occurs, often it will accumulate a history on it, making it work slower than it should. When you perform an upgrade, this history will be carried over to the new server. Migration allows you to target what you want to migrate over, hopefully leaving items behind that may reduce the effectiveness of the server. Migration also allows you to do the following. If you had two servers on the network, you could split the roles between the two servers. Migration allows you to do this, whereas an upgrade only allows you to upgrade an existing server. It does not allow you to move roles between different servers. Migration also allows roles to be migrated from one server to another where an upgrade is not available, such as when different architecture is being used. For example, upgrades between 32-bit to 64-bit or Itanium to Intel are not possible, but a migration is. Also, you can perform migrations between editions. For example, if you want to migrate a role from a server running Standard to a server running Essentials, no upgrade path is available for this. However, a migration is possible. Although this is unusual, imagine you had a case where you wanted to move the Standard license to a different server and downgrade that server to run Essentials. If this was the case, you could export the settings, reinstall the operating system, and then import the settings on the Essentials server, freeing up the Standard license. To get a better understanding of migration, I will now change to my Windows Server 2012 R2 computer and look at how to perform a migration of the DHCP role. On this server, I will migrate the DHCP role from a server running Windows Server 2003. To do this, I first need to install the role Windows Server Migration Tools. To install Windows Server Migration Tools, I will first open Server Manager, and then select the option Add Roles and Features. Since I am installing migration tools on the local server, I will accept all the defaults until I get to the Feature Selection screen. On the Feature Selection screen, I will tick the option Windows Server Migration Tools. Once selected, it is just a matter of finishing the wizard to install the feature. The install only takes a minute or so to complete, but I have sped up the process so we do not have to wait. Once the install has completed, I will open the Tools menu and go down to Windows Server Migration Tools. And there is a second option for Windows Server Migration Tools. It is possible to install additional items under Windows Server Migration Tools, and that is why it appears twice. The shortcut itself opens PowerShell. The only difference between this PowerShell prompt and a normal PowerShell prompt is that the Windows Server Migration Tools snap-in has been preloaded. If you want to load them manually, you can run the following command. Essentially, the shortcut runs this command for you. In order to transfer the roles from one server to another, I first need to create an install package that can be used on the source server, which in this case is Windows Server 2003. To do this, run the command smig deploy with the parameters /package/architecture, followed by the architecture, which in this case is x86. You could also use AMD 64 if the source system is 64-bit. Following this is the /OS followed by the OS. In this case, the source operating system is Windows Server 2003, so this will be WS03. For a full list of operating systems, see the description or PDF of this video. The last parameter is /path, followed by the folder that you want the package to be created in. Once entered, I will run the command, which does not take too long to complete. Once complete, I will exit out of PowerShell and open Windows Explorer. From Windows Explorer, it is just a matter of navigating to the Output folder and then copying this to a USB key that I have plugged into this computer. The USB key will contain the package that I need to install on Windows Server 2003, since Windows Server 2003 does not come with the migration tools built in. Once complete, I will change to my Windows Server 2003 install to perform the migration. Before I export the configuration data for the roles on this server, I will first open DHCP from Administrative Tools under the Start menu. You will notice that in DHCP there is a scope already defined on this server, and also some reservations have been defined. Rather than having to recreate this information again on another server, I will export these settings to be imported on Windows Server 2012 R2. First of all, I need to install Server Migration Tools. To do this, I will open Windows Explorer and open the folder for the package I created on Windows Server 2012 R2. In this folder, I will run the command smig deploy. If all goes well, Windows Server Migration Tools will be registered with the local operating system. Once this is completed, PowerShell will open with Windows Server Migration Tools ready to go. If I close this window, I can also achieve the same result by running Windows Server Migration Tools found under Administrative Tools under the Start menu. Just to prove a point, I will instead open PowerShell from under All Programs and run the following command from PowerShell. This command will register the Windows Server Migration Tools snap-in PowerShell. Effectively, this will achieve the same result as if I used the shortcut in the Start menu. In order to see which roles are installed and can be exported, run the command get smig server feature. You can see routing and remote access services and DHCP are installed on the server. To start with, I will export the settings for DHCP. This is done with the command export smig server setting with the parameter feature ID DHCP. If you do not know what the ID is, notice that you can obtain it from the output of the previous command. The next parameter is path, which is the location to store the exported settings to. Later on, I will use the USB drive to transfer this to the other server. The last parameter that I will add is the verbose parameter. This will increase the amount of output from the command and is optional. Once the command is run, it will prompt you for a password to protect the data. Since it will contain the settings from the server, it could potentially contain sensitive information. In this case, it contains DHCP information and thus contains the IP addresses of computers on the network and thus could be potentially misused if it were to get into the wrong hands. Now that the data has been exported, I will close PowerShell and open Windows Explorer. I will then copy that data that I just exported to the USB drive. Once complete, I will change to my Windows Server 2012 R2 install to start the import. First of all, I need to install the DHCP role. To do this, I will first open Server Manager, and from the Manage option, select Add Roles and Features. Since I will install the role on the local server, I can accept all the default options in the wizard. Once I get to the Server Roles selection screen, I will select the role DHCP Server and also add the feature DHCP Server Tools when prompted. No other options are required, so I will accept all the defaults and next my way to the Install screen and then start the install. The install took a minute or two to complete on this computer, but I have sped up the process. Once the role has been added to the server, it needs to be configured. To do this, I will select the option Complete DHCP Configuration to start the post-configuration wizard. Once past the welcome screen, the wizard will ask for a user account that has enough access to authorize the DHCP server in Active Directory. If a DHCP server is started that has not been authorized in Active Directory, it will automatically be shut down. In this case, I have logged into the server using the Domain Administrator account. This has enough access to authorize the DHCP server, so I will press the Commit button to complete the authorization of the DHCP server in Active Directory. Now that this is done, I can close this wizard and the previous wizard, and then from the Tools menu, select DHCP. If I expand DHCP, notice that none of the options have been configured. To configure them, I will import the DHCP settings from the other DHCP server. To do this, I will go to Server Manager and select the Tools menu, and then select the folder Windows Server Migration Tools, and then select the option Windows Server Migration Tools. Before I can import the DHCP server settings, I first need to stop the DHCP service. To do this, I will run the command net stop DHCP server. Once the DHCP service is stopped, I will be able to import the settings. To do this, I will run the command import SMIG server settings. The command needs to know which settings to import, so this is done with the switch Feature ID DHCP. Following this, I need to use the Path switch, followed by the location where I stored the exported DHCP settings. Once I run the command, I will need to enter in the password that I used when I exported the DHCP settings. Once entered, the import will begin. It does take a minute or so to complete, but I've sped up the process. It appears that the command has run. However, notice under Success the result is false. It is important when running the command to check this to make sure it was successful. Unlike a lot of other commands in Windows, the fact that it has failed is not that noticeable. In the case of the DHCP role, I need to add the switch Force to the end of the command line. Once I press up to get the last command back, I can add the Force switch and run the command again. The command once again will ask me for the password and takes a minute or so to run, but I've sped up this process. Once complete, notice that under Success, it is now true. So the import process has been successful, and I can start the DHCP service using the command net start DHCP server. The DHCP server does not take too long to start up, but once complete, I can go back to the DHCP admin tool, press F5 to refresh the screen, and notice now that the settings have been imported. That's it for importing DHCP settings. If you plan on transferring roles by using the import and export options, do some research first. Some roles are quite simple to transfer, and others require a little more planning to transfer over. Thanks for watching this video from ITFreeTraining, just one of the free videos from us. For more free videos, please see our YouTube channel or website. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.